But yeah, go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Mountaine Jonas, and I'm talking about how it gets better because it's been my long life experience that it really, really does. So I have two stories to tell. One is from my teenage coming out period. So I'll just launch into that one, which was that I was really confused about my sexuality, and at the age of 13, 14, 15, just didn't know what to do with it all, and so I kind of stuffed it and threw it away, and it was just too confusing and complicated. And what happened for me was, well, first of all, of course, I got called a fag and had awful experiences in high school, and that wasn't fun at all, and it made it even worse. So I just stuffed it and tried to be as normal as I could. Um, and I achieved a pretty high degree of normalcy, depending on how you measure that. But I went to a prestigious college and etc. Anyway, what happened for me was I discovered my love for Eastern spirituality at the age of 19. Something grabbed me about the way that the Buddhist teachings resonated for me. And I just started to devour stuff about Hindu approaches and Buddhist approaches and whatever else I could find that was different from my upbringing, which was Jewish, and I knew a lot of Christians, and so I knew that whole world of Western religion. But this was brand new, and it was very exciting. And after about a year of that, I began to realize that all this talk of meditation and finding your center um, that anything is possible and it's all about choices. So many teachings I could just refer to briefly here, but that all of that would be null if I didn't deal with my sexuality. It just wasn't going to work. I was closing off this one side of myself like it didn't exist. And how could I be a balanced, centered, Om chanting being without acknowledging my own sexuality, which at that point was clearly the homo side? So it was in that spirit that I came out. And I had this huge extra um, degree of strength then in the coming out process because I was relatively fearless about it. I really understood why I was doing it. And it wasn't just because I had these physical urges or emotional urges, but it was also a spiritual urge that because something was getting in the way of my being my whole self. And that allowed me to come out. And it was all right. That's the past. Well, now it's the present. So, the present, we're now in 2010, and it's a very different world than I grew up in many, many ways. Still, life can be as harsh and difficult for people as it ever was. The more that I learn a bit about history, the more that I see that it's just the same old story. People hurting each other, people grabbing onto their belief systems and saying this is what reality is, and then saying everybody else is wrong and having wars, or at least little fights. Even within the family, it's the same old story. And so, um, what's different about this time? There are a few things different. But the main one I think is worth addressing right now is frankly the internet. Because when I was a teenager coming out, I had no role models, I had no resources, I didn't know anything about gay literature, gay fiction. Reading a book of fiction, a love story between two guys, I couldn't conceive of such a thing. And that's all really changed. It's changed as a result of all the work that was done by activists in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now the first decade of this century. That's had a big effect on many things in people's views towards being different. And, um, and then there's the internet, where even if someone doesn't have ex, ex, even if someone doesn't find resources that are accessible that provide other role models of different ways to be, if the only role model that someone has for being a gay guy is Will and Grace, for example, which I would not want to be someone's only role model, the internet is just full of alternatives, alternative ways of being and of being queer. And for me, the way that has resonated now for almost 20 years is the radical fairy way. So a lot of people have never heard of it, but it's a place where people at least strive to accept each other for who they are and allow each other to thrive as their own individual beings. At least that's the intention in a radical fairy space. So now I have said it, and if you are watching this, you've heard